Welcome to Withdraw Consent. I'm Victor. He's Jack. So, what really happened with the Holocaust?
Oh, the Holocaust, you
Yes.
say? That thing. Okay. Let me tell you before I tell you what happened with the Holocaust.
Okay.
Let me tell you this. People think that if you talk about any facts related to the Holocaust, that you're anti-Semitic.
Right.
True or false?
It's true that that's what people say. It is false what they're saying.
Why?
Because talking about facts doesn't mean you hate something or anything like that. You're just talking about facts.
Right. And so if you disagree with that point, I'm going to reference a video in the description that we did. It's called Is Reality Racist or Sexist?
Okay.
And basically the point of that video is that if you think that all people are equal, then you think that the NBA is incredibly racist.
Right.
Because black people just have that specific group of talents that make them, in general, better than everybody else on the planet. There'll be no future, except for genetic modification or something, that Asians are just going to beat up. And it's going to be
Right.
an all-Asian NBA.
Yeah.
Not going to happen. That's not racist that is the case.
That's just reality.
Right. And if you look at different professions, it's not racist that people have certain proclivities, and that's the beautiful diversity of life.
Okay.
So when we talk about facts, it just can't be anti-Semitic. Or else the whole world's anti-Semitic, and the word anti-Semitic doesn't mean anything.
Right.
First, we're going to talk about what is the current claim. It's going to surprise you, maybe, for what happened in the Holocaust, how many Jews died. And so basically, what was the claim you were taught in school?
6 million
6 million what?
Jews were. I mean, my brain is telling me like gassed or in the ovens.
Yeah,
and that
6
type of
million Jews gassed. Right. That was the claim. It was, there's 5 to 6 million other people.
thing. Okay.
I don't know, gypsies. I don't know.
So the 6 plus 5 or 6 more?
Yeah, so the
Wow.
claim is 11 to 12. Okay.
Oh, they're terrible.
That's not the claim, though, at all.
No.
So basically, I'm going to pull up the screen, and this is from the Holocaust Encyclopedia from the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum. So this is a fully Jewish-owned, Jewish-ran thing. This is not
Approved,
some,
yeah.
this is not some propaganda. This is what they claim, and I'm going to pull it up on the screen now. So basically, it says that 1 million Jews were gassed at Auschwitz. It says that 925,000 were killed at Treblinka too, which is kind of like, we're going to talk about that. And then Belzec, 434,000, Sobibor, 167,000, Chelmo, 167,000. And then that's the extent of the claim about the gassing at camps.
That's under 3?
Yeah. So I honestly think that they changed this website since the last time I looked at it.
Okay.
So I'm going to look at it. It's 192324. Oh, okay, it's about the same. 2.7 million.
Okay.
Okay. And so it might astound you to realize that the claim is that 2.7 million Jews were gassed, not 6 million. We're going to go into more detail on why that is.
Okay.
But basically, there's this thing called science, and it intervened. And then basically, if you had looked at this website, it wouldn't have been a website then, but in the late 80s, it would have said there were 4.5 million gassed at Auschwitz.
Oh, okay.
That number was now dropped to 1 million.
Wow.
And so since there's now 3.5 million less people claim to be gassed because of science, then the story changed to the Holocaust is now not gassing, it's how many died during a war.
Of just like in combat.
No, it's just people of an ethnicity who died during a war is now the 6 million.
Oh.
Because they had to keep the 6 million, but they're going to drop it by 3.5 or 3.3. You know, it just depends on the numbers are jiggled around. So then you're changing the parameters of what the Holocaust is.
To keep the number high.
To keep the number at 6 million. No, at a specific number, 6 million, because 6 million is important. 6 million Jews died at World War I. But then that story didn't really stick, actually, because there's books written about it, newspaper articles. No, it didn't really stick because there just wasn't the bodies. There wasn't any way to perpetuate that.
Were there bodies for this?
Yeah, there were bodies.
Okay.
And we're going to explain about those bodies. We're going to explain about typhus, and we're going to explain about hunger when the Jews convinced the Americans to bomb the railroads in so they couldn't get supplies. We'll talk about all that.
Okay.
But if we could pull up the chart again, we're going to look at who the other 3.3 million were. And then so we got shooting operations at various locations in central and southern German-occupied Poland, 200,000. Oh, my goodness. It just kills me. Shooting operations, blah, 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 blah. Okay, listen. What's the movie I'm thinking of? It's got the Craig guy from, do you remember what I'm talking about? Starts with D? I can never remember the name of this movie. Daniel Craig from 007 made a movie. He's a Jew, wandering around in the woods fighting Germans.
This wasn't Schindler's List. I mean, that's the only.
No, it starts with a
Nazi
D.
one, I think.
Anyways, I'll just write it in the description.
Okay.
But it's basically, okay, east of Germany, you have the Eastern Occupied Territories, which is Poland, right? It's now under German control. And then you've got a bunch of Jews running around in the forest trying to fight for their freedom. They are freedom fighters 100%.
Okay.
Unless you're German, in which case they're 100% terrorists because they're not in uniform, they're fighting. They're being listed on here as Holocaust victims. They're
Nice.
freedom fighting heroes for their faction. For the other faction, they're totally terrorists, completely totally terrorists.
Right.
And you catch them, you get shot, you get hung, you're a terrorist. Sorry, they're not Holocaust victims. You're doing a strong disservice to those heroic people who gave their lives for a cause they believed in, whether that cause was just or not.
Right.
I appreciate your valor and I appreciate you posthumously. Okay. So basically, yeah, just a bunch of shooting operations. And then you have, could you scroll down for me a little bit? I think you have other down here. Let me see. Okay, we got technical malfunctions. Okay. I'm sorry to laugh at this. Deaths in ghetto is 800,000 from the Holocaust.
So while they were living in a ghetto, someone died, and
Someone
it's not
died.
counted.
So there was hunger, there was pestilence, there was old age.
Oh.
There was, do you know what there was? There was a lot of Allied bombs on civilian targets. Look at this. Other is at least 500,000. So look, when you send 1,000 bombers to bomb Dresden, not a military target, and all these refugees have packed it, and Jews are 2% of the population in Germany, 2% of your bombs are killing Jews. It's a Holocaust, baby. It's not.
Wow.
It's not. I'm sorry you died. I'm sorry all the civilians died who were targeted. I don't care your ethnicity, your nationality. I don't care. That's trash. That's war crimes by the U.S. We're not getting into that now. But sorry, you're not a Holocaust victim. You're a victim of something else. War crimes. It's terrible what happened, you know? And they should put lists of all the names of all the civilians everywhere, but it would just take too long to make, you know, that big of a thing. So anyways, this is the claim.
Okay.
Okay. And it's important to understand that we're not, when you talk about like how many people really died, you're not even asking, did 6 million people get gassed? You're asking, did 2.7 million people get gassed?
Okay. Interesting.
Okay. And so this is such a long subject, we're going to break it up into 3 parts.
Okay.
We're going to do the overview and then talk about why there was certain narratives put forward in this video. The next video is just going to be exclusively about Auschwitz because, as you see, 1 million of the 2.7 million are claimed to have died there.
It's the biggest
Biggest
claim.
place.
Okay.
And that one changed from 4.5 million to 1 million, science. And we're going to talk about that in the second video. The third video, we're going to talk about Treblinka, which is the next biggest with 925,000. Focus solely on that, and then we're going to do a conclusion at the end of that one. All the videos will be linked to each other in the descriptions. And so we want to talk about everything in this video related to this claim that's not Auschwitz or Treblinka.
Okay.
So we want to cover all the things. So an interesting fact that people might not know is that the United States never found a death camp.
Okay.
So there were camps everywhere, and there was prison camps, work camps, and then there was death camps, we'll say. Okay, this is the claim. And so what happened is there's the Jewish American Congress, and they work together with the United States government to achieve various objectives for their ethnic people. It's a lot like a lobby, you know?
Okay, so they're not in Congress. It's just a Congress,
No,
a separate.
it's their Congress, Jewish American
okay.
Congress, you know. It's like the Jewish Defense League. It's just a group.
Okay, gotcha.
And so basically they say that, look, they're getting all these letters coming back from the Red Cross. Because keep in mind, in these camps, the Red Cross is always allowed in to send packages, you know? And so people are getting packages. You could just be a random person in the U.S. and say, hey, Red Cross, here's a box of blankets. Send it to Jews. You don't got to know somebody. And they'll be like, okay, we're low on packages to this camp. We'll send them. So there's all this back and forth. And there's these letters coming back. Well, the Jewish American Congress says, hey, we have these letters saying that it's really deathy over there. There's tons of death camps. And if you were to send American troops into Germany, you will find lots of death camps. Bergen-Belsen, it's a death camp. Dachau, it's a death camp. And then they just list all the death camps. So eventually, we got D-Day. We got France liberated. And then we've got our troops going to Germany. They make it certain far before the Russians get everything else, because the Russians take Berlin, you know. And every single one of the camps that the Jewish American Congress described as a death camp turned out to be a concentration camp. It was a work camp. It was a prison camp. So the U.S. never found a death camp.
So a concentration camp, like as you say that word, it has a very negative connotation to me.
Right.
So a concentration camp just means there was a concentration of people?
Yeah.
Like,
Okay.
what is
So that's bad that I'm saying that. It's either a work camp or a prison camp.
Okay.
A prison camp meaning we're confining you to keep you away from the outside. And a work camp mean you are being temporarily imprisoned to do work for a variety of reasons. And so we never found a death camp.
Okay.
Well, we did find a death camp. Let me tell you about Dachau. Okay?
Yeah.
So we roll into Dachau, which we're promised by the Jewish American Congress is a death camp. And you'll notice on our list, it's not on the list as a death camp. So we go in there, and since they are such a bad death camp, our soldiers just machine gun down like 17 of the guards, right?
Yeah.
And then their superior officer's like, hey, don't do that again or we're going to court martial you. But we got to go to lunch. So, So they line up all the other 270 guards and just gun them all down. Like just war crime, So then the Army Engineering Corps comes in to the showers and they lower the ceilings. They make it airtight and they actually do construction projects to make this look like a death camp.
Okay.
Right? Then, because I'm just very deathy, they marched the German citizens into Dachau, which we're talking women and children here because the men are fighting or dead or hiding, maybe, I don't know, because the occupiers here. So they march all these nice women and children in here and they say, look what you've done. Look at all the death. There's bodies everywhere because people have starved, typhus, all this thing. And then the German people are you've seen it in the movies, them marching the German people to the camps. You've seen it in all the movies. But if the U.S. never found a death camp, every time the U.S. marched Germans into the camp, that was propaganda. Mm-hmm. That was just the ultimate psyop. And the Germans, who were actually very good people, even like I was a member of the party, And these women are like, I can't believe we did this. We were so tricked. We were deceived. I can't believe we're so evil. We're the worst. And if you go to Germany today, they still believe that they're the worst. Mm-hmm. They still believe this psyop of Dachau. Now, we'll talk about Auschwitz and Treblinka later. Let's not get into that. We're just talking about the U.S. place. So anyways, so we ran that psyop on them. Obviously, the U.S. never found a death camp, so that was all just a psyop. And then basically, I believe it was 11 years later, so we go to 1956, the U.S. just came out and said, yeah, Dachau wasn't a death camp.
And so they admitted about the engineers and the whole thing?
No, that was found out later when things were declassified.
Oh, okay.
But they just came out and said, yeah, no, it's not a death camp.
Okay.
So for 11 years, they had told you, but kind of, so if you were born from 1956 on, your entire life, Dachau has not been a death camp.
Okay.
And the U.S. has not found a death camp. If you were born in that period for a time, you might have thought briefly that the U.S. did find one, but they didn't.
I feel like I've talked to someone who visited Europe and they've still got memorials and stuff at Dachau.
Okay, yeah, they do.
Oh, okay.
Right.
For something that didn't happen.
Right. So there's still a psyop, even though if you just Google it, it's not on the list from the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum. Okay. But they're still trying to run this up. So for example, at Bergen-Belsen, which the Americans occupied, promised it was a death camp by the JSC. And we get there, it's just definitely not a death camp. But anyways, you know what they did afterwards? I don't know who did this, but they reconstructed gas chambers and crematoriums, but then they put signs on them in German and English that say, reconstruction never was actually a gas chamber at Bergen-Belsen. But they're just putting one there. So if you happen to go there and you're like, man, I wonder if a bunch of Jews had died here, what it would look. Oh, there it is. That's what it would look like. What the heck are you guys talking about?
So it's not even a reconstruction. It's just a construction.
They're just building something.
Yeah.
They're just building something. And also, I want to say this. Okay, let me hit you with this point.
Okay.
If you're looking at this video and you're like, you dirty white guy saying that stuff about Dachau, Jews did die there, even though Google says not. That's pretty anti-Semitic. Me saying that they didn't when they factually didn't and Google says they didn't, how is that anti-Semitic?
Right.
I was having a conversation with my father about this, right? And I was trying to figure out how I should just indoctrinate him, what propaganda I should use. And I said...
On this subject?
On this subject,
oh,
because
okay.
It's a hard subject to broach. And I would say, would you feel happy or sad if many, 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 many less Jews died in the Holocaust than you thought?
Yeah, than you were taught.
Yeah, than you were taught. And the answer has to be yes.
Or you're an awful...
Or else you want more genocide than the Nazis actually did.
Right.
That's where you're at. Do you know what I mean?
That's incredible. Yeah.
Right. And so it's like...
What did your father say?
He said, absolutely.
Oh, good.
And then I also said, would it hurt your view of the world when talking about the Holocaust if Hitler wasn't as bad of a guy as bad as you think he is? Because so many people, they depend on their life revolves around Hitler. Like
Sure.
Trump is Hitler. You know what I mean?
But it's the ultimate barometer for how bad a human being can be.
Right. And would it just deconstruct your worldview
Right.
if you knew that? And then he said, nah, I mean, as a matter of fact, it wouldn't, because I don't really care that much. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Which is cool because he's not like a pundit or something,
Yeah.
So anyways, you mentioned like, were there piles of bodies? And there were piles of bodies. Okay. So what happened is, we're going to cover this a little bit more in the Auschwitz one, but there's a disease called typhus. Are you familiar with it?
I feel like just what I've seen in like watching videos about the Holocaust.
Okay. Yeah, it's the war disease. It's transferred via lice.
Okay.
So that's why prisoners going into the camp who were about to be deathed were shaved so they don't have lice, and their clothes were taken and decontaminated right before they killed them so they wouldn't get typhus.
We want to have clean bodies.
Yeah. So anyways, basically, typhus is the killer in war. And basically what happens is when you get typhus, you die. You cannot keep your calories down. So you can consume 10,000 calories, you're dead because everything's coming out of both ends. You can't keep your calories. It doesn't matter if you're underfed or overfed, you're just dead.
So you basically starve to death even if you're eating?
Right.
Oh, wow.
So basically, when you see, when you're thinking and you're like, oh, the Holocaust, and you remember those pictures of the bodies, the piles of bodies, and they're all just so gaunt, there's not a tiniest bit of fat on them.
Oh, that is the typhus. Okay.
See, those people weren't gassed.
Right.
If you take me and gas me right now, I'm going to look like this, maybe a little bloated. I'm going to be discolored, depending on the gas used.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to look like that.
Right.
Or your other thing is say they starved to death. You could say, okay, it was typhus. That's what the piles of bodies were. And then there were people who starved to death, sadly, because basically the Jewish, we're going to get this more in Auschwitz, but the Jewish American Congress pushed for bombing the railways into the death camps, which caused tremendous amount of deaths because now they can't get supplies. Now they can't get Zyklon B, which they need to delouse because it was a delousing agent to get rid of the lice. The entire goal of Zyklon B is to stop typhus because typhus is just a war killer. It's just a war disease, And so people did starve and people did now get typhus, and the typhus couldn't get under control because they didn't have the supplies they need. So when you see those piles of bodies, you can think the Jewish American Congress. At a work camp, you're trying to keep typhus to a minimum. And so this is just one of the things you see in relation to the Holocaust. Another one, it depends on what you watch. It's like you see like there's like a mass killing with like 5,000 people got killed. And it was like you see a machine gunning them in mass graves, right? Mm-hmm. So this is not gassing related, okay?
Okay.
There is a conspiracy theory here that it's pretty strange that the people in Nazi uniforms had AK-47s, Kalashnikovs. Pretty suspicious,
Right.
So it might, but I'm not even saying that. Like, say, what if it was them? I'm going to tell you the story, how the story goes that arose from this. There's the Germans occupy the Eastern occupied territory, which is Poland, right?
Okay.
And there's terrorists out there who are also freedom fighters, and they're the Jews and their allies who are running around. And basically what happened is the USSR wanted to help the terrorists / freedom fighters, but they couldn't supply them with anything. So they flew planes over and dropped leaflets. Here's how you derail a train. Here's how you build an explosive. Here's how you build it. Because they can't give them any supplies. We could just give you little manuals, And so basically there was a German barracks and it got bombed through an artificial bomb like this. And 200 boys died in the night. The entire country was outraged that this would happen because this is just a terror attack. Like if you say, hey, we're attacking the base with machine guns and uniforms, that's war.
Right.
This is terrorism. On the other hand, the guys are freedom fighters because they're trying to get rid of this illegal occupying military. So whatever, I'm not making a moral judgment here. I'm just talking about the facts. And so the story goes that they then sent out people to round up all of the suspects. And they got the Social Democrats, who were the communists at the time, and they got a bunch of people and then shot them. That's what that was. If it was that or it's the Kalashnikovs. But I'm just saying that's not indicative of a gassing.
Okay, gotcha.
And then a lot of the deaths came from the mass shootings. I mean, not the mass shootings. I'm sorry. What does it say? Shooting operations at various locations, right? And so then what happened with that was in Eastern, we talked about it, in Eastern occupied territories. And they made this group called the Einsatzgruppen, and they made a Central, North, and South. And they were just trying to fight the guerrilla warfighters,
Oh, okay.
And so whenever they find them, they would shoot them. And when they did find a lot of them, they found that like the German soldiers were having psychological damage from shooting people, from executing guerrilla warfare people. So they had a horse and cart, and the cart had a gun on the back. and it was set up so you just walk the person backwards into it, and then when it hits the button, it does it. But you're blocked and you don't even see the guy drop. You know what I mean? And then somebody just has to pull because they were just going wild out there.
Yeah.
You know? Anyways, in my opinion, that's not gassing.
Right.
That's something else. I support people fighting for their freedom. I support people
protecting from
people fighting. It just depends. It's two different sides, and I'm not the arbiter of justice here and all that.
Yeah.
You know? And then, so let's see. What else do we got? We've got... I just want to talk briefly about Nuremberg. Okay. So the Nuremberg trials happened after the war.
Yep.
And this is when we could really go in and get justice for all the Nazis who had done the Holocaust.
Totally.
Right. Like the ones we had mass murdered at, Dachau. So the Nuremberg trials were a complete joke. Okay. There was this American lawyer who went over there to take part in, let's get these Nazis. They're terrible, very deathy, So he gets over there. He acquires a bunch of evidence and then just immediately flies home. And he writes this book called Imperium. I forget the name of the author. I'll put that in the description too. I have a lot of stuff in the description. So basically, he said it was just a bunch of Jewish lawyers and they were just trying to mass murder Germans as many as they could. Right? Oh, wow. So there was one case where they put a guy on trial for murder because he killed a Jew. He was a soldier. And then his trial goes, and then it finally gets to the part where he gets on the stand and they're say how do we know you didn't kill the guy? And he's like, because the guy's sitting in the courtroom right there that you're claiming that I killed. And then the Jewish lawyer turns to him and is like, oy vey, why you come here? You're so stupid. Get out of here. You were trying to get this guy murdered for killing you. Do you know what I mean? That was what the Nuremberg trials were like.
Wow.
They went to an officer and said, hey, your soldiers that we captured did this crime against the Jews. And he said, no, they didn't. And he says, cool, we're going to kill you all for doing this crime against the Jews. And he's like, well, we didn't do it. And he's like, you admit that you did it. We'll let all your men go free. And the officer said, we absolutely did that. And the Jews said, cool, hang them all. Got them. Wow. It was, okay, let me tell you a story that's even worse than that. Okay? Because you could say that those stories are anecdotal. This is not anecdotal because you could just go look it up in the newspaper, okay? So what happened is, the beginning of the war is Germany's fighting for the free people, for the free city of Danzig, to recover their ethnic German population that's being oppressed. 300 of them got locked into a church and burned to death. They're being oppressed. So they invade Poland to stop them, which initiates the Defense Pact. Now England and France are fighting against Germany as well. Russia's pact, once they see that Germany's doing good, their pact initiates that they had before this with Germany. They attack Poland. Boom, they stop here. Russia's got part of Poland. Germany's got most of Poland, including Warsaw, right?
Okay.
Well, a little while goes by and there's a bunch of Polish officers missing. So the Russians say, you know what? Nazis, they killed the Polish officers, murdered them all, right? And the world's like, wow, the Nazis are really bad. This is the first time we really know that they're really evil, because this is 1939 right now.
Okay.
So, okay, that story dies down because some time passes. We go through the Phantom War. Now we get to 1941, Operation Barbarossa. So now the Germans are going to invade Russia, their ally, several weeks before the Russians or the USSR is going to initiate Operation Thunder, which they're going to invade their allies, Germany. So Germany beats them to it, starts marching with their blitzkrieg, just starts overwhelming them and pushing. They come to the Katian Forest and mass graves, 20,000 dead Polish soldiers. And so the Germans stop right there and say, whoa, third party, Red Cross, come look at this. And the Red Cross shows up, looks, oh yeah, it's 20,000. Where was the line? Oh, the line was miles back that way. Oh, this is the Russians did this. The USSR did this. So then there's these newspaper articles. Red Cross confirms the murder, the mass murder in the Katian Forest was really the USSR, not the Nazis, okay? Do you know who got tried and put to death for the murder in the Katian Forest at Nuremberg trials?
I would guess Germans.
The Germans.
Nice.
They literally got tried and then hung for something that the Red Cross, a third party, guarantees 100% that the USSR did.
Nice.
So if you think the Nuremberg trials or anything related to it were legitimate at all, it was absolutely illegitimate. It's important in the story to understand how incredibly biased all the information you get about this is. But I guarantee you that the Germans didn't kill anybody in the Katian Forest. Outside of the warfare that let them capture the forest, Okay. Now I want to talk about, we're done with Nuremberg. It sucks.
Okay.
I just want to talk about why. Like
why all of this?
Yeah, why? We're going to get more into this in the conclusion out in the third part after Treblinka. But I want to talk to you, why do you think that these stories were told, like the Dachau story. Why did they go there in there with the Army Engineering Corps? Why did they lower the ceilings? Why did they march? Why? And this is opinion part. So everything before this, we've just been talking fact.
Yeah.
Now we're doing our personal opinions. If you disagree, that's fine. But I'm not claiming anything from here on as fact.
I mean, I guess ultimately it seems like it's the Holocaust story told as it has been has made the Jewish people the ultimate like victim. Then you can't say anything about them ever.
Okay. So that is an effect of the story. But what would cause the United States Army Engineering Corps to go create the situation that then created that effect that you mentioned?
Oh, yeah, I don't know.
Okay, I have some theories.
Okay.
So one of my theories is that when you're looking at the propaganda after the war, everybody's going to look back on it with 20/20 hindsight with the information they have available at the time.
Okay.
And they're just going to start analyzing. There's going to be books written. There's going to be... Okay. When you look at the United States behavior in the war, it was atrocious. Like I was saying before, we bombed civilian targets. I mean, we're just talking Europe here, but we could go into firebombing the
Japanese.
Terrible, just all 200-mile-an-hour firestorms, just melting families, just generations lost that just lost their lineage forever. I don't care what people you are, that's trash. In Germany, though, they did terrible things with the bombings. After General Patton had a minor car crash and then died of a broken neck because he didn't like the situation that was going on.
Yep.
So then we got Eisenhower's death camps. Millions of Germans just put in camps and just end up dying of hunger out in the open and exposure. Like, if you look at all these things and you say, what situation could we create that would make this all justified?
Oh, we need to be the good guys. Since we won, we're going to write history.
It's got to be worse than this.
Oh, interesting.
Like, we killed 100,000 civilians in Dresden on one night, not a military target. What could be worse than that? Because now what we did was with the bombs, it's kind of like impartial. We're dropping them from pretty high.
Yeah.
We need something that's up close and dirty and massive
and
and filled with hatred and
not accidental and
right.
Yeah, interesting.
And so I have this theory that in order to craft the narrative afterwards, because you already had the story of the 6 million Jews from World War One.
Right.
Now you've got these dead bodies at this, not even alleged to be death camps. You got the typhus bodies. You got you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You've got the emaciated people who haven't eaten and they're walking up. It's sad, the video, and they're walking up to the thing and they're just like, and they had to lock those people in the camp. The American soldiers kept them locked in the camp so that they could feed them small amounts of food because they were afraid that they were going to gorge if they gave them a lot of food, or if they let them out, they'd gorge and die. So they had to be administered to, do you know what I'm saying? Like, it was a terrible situation at a non-death camp, But I'm just saying, they had to create a narrative that was worse.
Interesting. That's a good theory.
Okay. And then also, if I could interject historically, right?
Okay.
So in World War One, it was kind of stalematey for a while. And then an English diplomat got together with the Jews and made the Balfour Pact, which said basically, if international Jewry, like from all over the world, helps us through their banking, media, et cetera, all their influences, we'll give you a homeland.
Okay.
At some future time. So then the Jews agree, and then the Jews aid the Allies to win in World War One, which is where Ludendorff and Hitler's stab in the back theory, because there was a lot of communist Jewish groups who did strikes at munitions factories right at the part of the war that really mattered,
pivotal.
1917, right. And so anyways, whatever, I don't know if those claims are valid or not, but so they had to fulfill this pact, and now we get to World War II, and the pact hasn't been fulfilled. So this is also a way to do that. If we can elevate the victim status of these people, which is the effect of the narrative, will then give us we can honor our...
You get like global sympathy, and these people deserve a homeland.
Yeah, and especially if we're just going to roll up to somebody and say, that's ours.
Yeah.
Though I'll admit, when they rolled up to somebody, the Palestinians, and said, that's ours, the Jews did outnumber the Palestinians on the land at that time. So it's not like it was a minority going in, because even Hitler had been helping them get there, so that they had the numbers, but they had the numbers way before that. But anyways, that could be another goal for this.
Okay.
What do you think about that?
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, you couldn't oust indigenous people even in the 40s without there being an outcry unless the world was convinced that they deserved it.
Right.
So, yeah, it makes sense to me.
Okay, next theory.
Okay. Oh, man.
We're going on to the third theory. Okay, so we have the crash of the stock market in 1929 in the U.S.
Okay.
Now, when we talk about the hyperinflation in Weimar Republic, we always talk about that. Kind of, we're just talking about the early 20s.
Okay.
And so what happened there was we saddled them with an unpayable amount of war debt.
From World War One.
From World War One, right? And then they couldn't pay enough. So then the French marched into the Ruhr Valley, which is the industrial sector. We're taking all your goods, and then hyperinflation came. And that's kind of what we're talking about. In Mein Kampf, Hitler was talking. He's like, it was 2 million or billion marks for a beer or something. I forget, But we kind of think about that. But after the stock market fell in 1929, then they went into another recession and they had another inflation there. And so Hitler was already pushing politically at that point, and he was in decline. He wasn't in power yet. His party was in decline until the 1929 stock market crash, where it surged again, and then people said, we need a new solution. And then at that point, it was either going to be National Socialism or Social Democrats, which is communism. And then, the people narrowly chose National Socialism, right? And then what happened after that, after National Socialism came into power in 1933, the country just immediately went into a golden age, right? So 1933, we're in the Great Depression. People are dying, Dust Bowl migrations, terrible.
Right.
We're just dying, All over the world, people are dying, and it's terrible. Except the one first world country in the nation shouldn't be. They lost a world war recently. They got all this war debt, this and that, and everything's going spectacular. They're building an Autobahn in the middle of a depression that even after the war ends, it's going to be the best highway system in the world for 20 years after the war end. After they lost the war, it's still going to be the best freeway system until 1965. Do you know what I'm saying? So one of the problems, I believe, one of the reasons why this could have happened, this narrative was created, was because National Socialism is arguably, in my opinion, the most effective system of government ever created in the history of the world. Arguably, because in a small population like the democracy of Athens worked very well. In an even smaller population of 5 families, communism might be the best thing, So you could argue, but it's definitely in the running for the very best of all time. It's way better than democracy. You could argue constitutional republic's better. We could make that argument, but like a direct democracy, this would be way better. And so it was so successful, but what happened is, in its institution, it threatens the global system. And even though there wasn't a heavy global system, it threatens global banking, it threatens dependencies on other countries, like it threatens so many things, but it creates incredible prosperity for the group doing it. Okay. You're now getting no interest loans from the bank. You're now getting programs for people that actually, uplifting people who actually, corporations we're going to have a whole video on what is National Socialism. But a theory I have here is that when somebody says National Socialism, what do you think?
Currently?
Yeah.
Or what have I thought the rest of my life?
The rest of your life?
Well, evil and Holocaust. And
Nazis.
Yeah, totally.
Dang Nazis. Just pure evil. So what I'm saying is this entire narrative could have been crafted because it was the system of National Socialism that was such a threat to any other global system, anything. It's a threat to Brazil if, a country were to go, because it would erase those dependencies and the debt, slavery, and all that.
Well, yeah, and the people that are controlling all that stuff, they lose their power base, and if everyone finds out about this other way to do things,
and then all the bad people in the world have to get together to battle them, so we can crush this freedom, that we can crush this prosperity. Like, you should not be able to have a no interest home for your mortgage. Yeah. You should not be able to have that. That's what the system's telling you. National Socialism says, sorry, brother. I mean, if you want to go back to Christian values, usury is a sin. Charging interest is a sin.
Yeah.
You don't have any options except for usury. That's where they want you.
Right.
So, and we can get into economics more in a different video. But, so I just want to pitch this, that it could be that they want to associate National Socialism with Nazis and Holocaust. Okay. So therefore, you won't consider becoming a National Socialist.
Right. Yeah, the stigma is the same as, Adolf Hitler is the worst human being. Nazis are the worst people. Like, it's all just been about denigrating that.
Right.
methodology and just everything that they were involved in.
Right. And it doesn't have to be a single one of these. It could just be a confluence of the three.
Yeah.
Because they're all highly plausible reasons.
Right. Yeah. Part of me thinks that that's the best one that you said out of the three.
Okay.
Because that is the biggest threat to
Right.
the people in control.
Right. And I guess it depends on who, because you've got to get a coalition of people to agree to do this.
Right.
So each group is having different, you know what I'm saying? Motivations. And so all three of those motivations can be in play.
Yeah, yeah.
And so in our next video, we're going to talk about Auschwitz
Okay.
and the 1 million.
Okay.
Because if 1 million or 4.5, which is previously claimed, were gassed at Auschwitz, then that's a legitimate Holocaust, just that camp alone.
Sure, totally.
If say that didn't happen, but 925,000 got gassed at Treblinka, that's a full Holocaust, I say.
Right.
Because if I could anger some Turks here, the Armenian genocide was what, 1.1, 1.2 million? That's a legitimate genocide. It's targeting a group based on their ethnicity.
But how many people actually know about that?
I had some friends who are Armenians. Not a lot.
But I'm saying the vast majority of people
Right.
have no clue what that is.
Right.
Okay. So what are your thoughts on this? I know it's a touchy subject, and it's one of those things that's ingrained in you your whole life, that certain people did certain things. And what are your thoughts? We're going to keep going deeper and deeper into this the next couple. I hope you're willing to stick with us, and hopefully you learned something. If we're missing a point or something, please let us know. We'd love to hear from you. We'll see you next time. We really hope you will check out these other 2 videos in this series. We feel like this is a very important topic, and it's important that people understand what has happened.